The rain fell in sheets across the neon-lit streets of New Seoul Station, turning the pavement into a mirror of reflected advertisements and hurrying figures. Kalen pulled his coat tighter, navigating through the crowd with the practiced efficiency of someone who had lived in this human dragon settlement for years. The galactic integration had brought many species together, but dragons and humans still maintained careful boundaries, professional respect masking centuries of mutual wariness. He almost walked past her, but a figure huddled against the wall of a closed shop caught his peripheral vision. The scales, once brilliant crimson, now dulled to the color of old rust. The wings, magnificent appendages that had once commanded respect across 3 systems, folded tight against a frame grown painfully thin. Kalen's steps faltered, then stopped completely. Vash, the dragon woman, looked up, and Kalen felt his heart shatter. Those golden eyes, once fierce with pride and determination, now held only hollow exhaustion. Her hand trembled as she held out a battered cup, the universal gesture of the desperate. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the rain. "Anything helps." Kalen dropped to his knees, ignoring the puddle soaking through his pants. "What happened? How are you here?" Vash's gaze flickered with recognition, then shame. She turned her face away. "Go away, Kalen. You don't need to see this." But he couldn't leave. 5 years had passed since their divorce, since the cultural pressures and family expectations had torn them apart. Dragon society didn't approve of human marriages. His own family had called it a phase. They had loved each other desperately, but love hadn't been enough against the weight of 2 worlds pulling in opposite directions. "I'm not leaving," Kalen said firmly. He shrugged off his coat and draped it over her shoulders. "Tell me what happened." Vash's resistance crumbled. The story came out in broken fragments. After their separation, she had returned to her clan, hoping to rebuild her life. But dragon society operated on strict hierarchies and ancient codes. She had broken their most sacred rule by marrying outside the species. Her family had disowned her formally. Her clan stripped her of her titles. Without status, she couldn't work in traditional dragon occupations. Without family connections, she couldn't access the support networks that kept dragon communities stable. "I tried human jobs," Vash said, her voice cracking. "But my wings make most spaces impossible. My size intimidates customers. My claws can't operate standard equipment. I lasted 3 months in a warehouse before they let me go. Savings ran out. Couldn't afford my apartment. Shelters don't accommodate dragon physiology." Kalen listened with growing horror. The galactic community prided itself on integration, but the reality was far more complex. Systems designed for one species often excluded others in subtle, devastating ways. Dragons needed vertical space, specialized nutrition, temperature-controlled environments. Without resources, those needs became insurmountable barriers. "How long have you been on the streets?" he asked. "For months." Vash pulled his coat tighter. "I didn't want you to know. Didn't want anyone to know. Dragons are supposed to be strong, proud, indomitable. Look at me now." Rain continued to pour, but Kalen barely noticed. He was remembering their marriage. The way Vash had laughed at his terrible jokes. How she had curled her massive form around him during thunderstorms, knowing he felt safer in her embrace. The fierce intelligence in her eyes when she debated galactic politics. The gentle touch of her claws when she brushed hair from his face. She had been magnificent, and some combination of societal pressure and systemic failure had reduced her to this. "Come with me," Kalen said, standing and offering his hand. Vash stared at it. "I can't accept charity. Especially not from you. This isn't charity. This is me refusing to let the person I love die on a street corner because 2 societies failed her." His voice was steady, determined. "You can argue with me, or you can get out of the rain. Choose." Something in his tone, perhaps an echo of their years together, made Vash reach for his hand. She unfolded slowly, painfully, her movements stiff from cold and malnutrition. Kalen didn't flinch at her size, never had. He simply guided her down the street toward his apartment, one small step at a time. His building's entrance scanner hesitated at her biosignature before accepting his override. The elevator creaked ominously under her weight, but held. Kalen's apartment was modest, designed for human comfort, but the ceilings were higher than standard. He had never changed that feature, even after she left. "Bathroom is there," he said, pointing. Hot water still works. I'll make tea. Vash stood in the center of his living room, dripping rainwater onto the floor, looking lost. Why are you doing this? Kaylin turned from the kitchen, meeting her eyes. Because when we got married, I promised to love you in sickness and health, prosperity and poverty. We might be divorced, but I never stopped meaning those words. I just stopped fighting hard enough to keep them. The devastation of those words hung in the air between them. Years of regret, of wondering what if, of missing someone even when you knew the relationship was impossible. Vash's carefully maintained composure finally broke. She sobbed, great shuddering sounds that came from somewhere deep in her chest, a dragon's grief too large for any space to contain. Kaelin crossed the room and wrapped his arms around her as much as he could reach, holding tight while she cried. Outside, the rain continued to fall on New Seoul Station, washing the streets clean, carrying away the debris of another day in a galaxy still learning how to care for all its citizens. The tea grew cold on the counter, forgotten. As two people who had once promised each other everything began the difficult work of figuring out what came next.